Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari.
Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari.
Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari.
Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari.
Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana.
Yashodanandana Brajajanaranjana.
Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana.
Yashodanandana Brajajanaranjana.
Yamuna Tira Vanachari.
Yamuna Tira Chari.
Yamuna Tira Vanachari.
Yamuna Tira Vanachari.
Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radhe.
Jaya Radha Madhava Radha Madhava Radhe.
Jaya Gauranitai 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 Jaya Gauranitai.
Jaya Gauranita, Jaya Gauranita, Gauranita, Jaya Gauranita.
Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Prabhupada.
Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada.
Jai Shri Shri Radha Madhava Sakhi Vrinda ki.
Jai,
Shri Shri Gauranitai ki.
Jai,
Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Okay, let me share my screen. We're reading from Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter number 4, Transcendental Knowledge, and text number 27 today. Yesterday, okay, 426 to 27. Okay, so please repeat after me. Oops, sorry. Okay, I hope you're still able to see the screen.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Sarvani Indriya Karmani
Sarvani Indriya Karmani
Prana Karmani Chapare
Prana Karmani Chapare
Atma Samyama Yogagnau
Atma Samyama Yogagna
Juhvati Jnana Deepite
Juhvati Jnana Deepite
Sarvani Indriya Karmani
Sarvani Indriya Karmani
Prana Karmani Chapare
Prana Karmani Chapare
Atma Samyama Yogagnau
आत्मसंयमयोगाग्नौ
जुह्वति ज्ञानदीपिते
जुह्वति ज्ञानदीपिते
सर्वाणीन्द्रियकर्माणि
सर्वाणीन्द्रियकर्माणि
प्राणकर्माणि चापरे
प्राणकर्माणि च परे
आत्मसंयमयोगाग्नौ
आत्मसंयमयोगाग्नौ
जुह्वति ज्ञानदीपिते
जुह्वति ज्ञानदीपिते
Can devotees please chant?
सर्वाणीन्द्रियाणि कर्माणि
सर्वाणीन्द्रियकर्माणि
प्राणकर्माणि चापरे
प्राणकर्माणि चापरे
आत्मसंयमयोगाग्नौ
आत्मसंयमयोगाग्नौ
जुह्वति ज्ञानदीपिते
जुह्वति ज्ञानदीपिते
सर्वाणीन्द्रियाणि कर्माणि
सर्वाणीन्द्रियकर्माणि
प्राणकर्माणि चापरे
प्राणकर्माणि चापरे
आत्मसंयमयोगाग्नौ
आत्मसंयमयोगाग्नौ
जुह्वति ज्ञानदीपिते
जुह्वति ज्ञानदीपिते
सर्वाणीन्द्रियकर्माणि
सर्वाणीन्द्रियकर्माणि
प्राणकर्माणि चापरे
प्राणकर्माणि चापरे
आत्मसंयमयोगाग्नौ
आत्मसंयमयोगाग्नौ
जुह्वति ज्ञानदीपिते
जुह्वति ज्ञानदीपिते Okay, synonyms. Sarvani,
सर्वाणि
of all.
of all
Indriya,
Indriya,
the senses.
the senses,
Karmani,
karma,
कर्माणि
functions.
functions,
Prana karmani,
prana karma,
प्राणकर्माणि
functions of the life breath.
functions
of the life breath
Cha,
cha,
also.
also
Apare,
apare,
others.
others,
Atma Samyama,
Atmasamyama
of controlling the mind.
of
of
controlling
controlling the mind
Yoga,
yoga
the linking process.
the
the
linking
linking process
Agnav,
pragna
Agno
in the fire of.
in the
in
fire,
the fire of
Juhvati,
juhvati,
Bhagavati
offer.
offer,
Jnana Deepite,
jnana dipite,
Anadipite
because of the urge for self-realization.
because of
because of the urge of self-realization.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada ki jai. Others who are interested in achieving self-realization through control of the mind and senses offer the functions of all the senses and of the life breath as oblations into the fire of the controlled mind. Purport. The yoga system conceived by Patanjali is referred to herein. In the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali, the soul is called Pratyagatma and Paragatma. As long as the soul is attached to sense enjoyment, it is called Paragatma. But as soon as the same soul becomes detached from sense enjoyment, it is called Pratyagatma. The soul is subjected to the function of 10 kinds of air at work within the body, and this is perceived through the breathing system. The Patanjali system of yoga instructs one on how to control the functions of the body's air in a technical manner so that ultimately all the functions of the air within become favorable for purifying the soul of material attachment. excuse me. According to this yoga system, Pratyagatma is the ultimate goal. This Pratyagatma is withdrawn from activities in matter. The senses interact with the sense objects like the ear for hearing, eyes for seeing, nose for smelling, tongue for tasting, and hand for touching, and all of them are thus engaged in activities outside the self. They are called the functions of the pranavayu. The apanavayu goes up, the apanavayu goes downwards. Vyanavayu acts to shrink and expand. Samanavayu adjusts equilibrium. Udanavayu goes upwards. And when one is enlightened, one engages all these in searching for self-realization. Om Ajnanatimidandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Lankayate Girim Yatkripatamaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinatarinam Paramanandamadhavam Shri Krishna Chaitanyamishwaram Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So those who attended the class yesterday, what was discussed yesterday? Does anyone remember yesterday's content?
The first part was about how these verses are a little complicated to understand just by the translation, and how Prabhupada makes it really clear in the purport. And then we discussed brahmachari life and how important that is before, even if you want to become a grihasta, to be a brahmachari first. And then after that, we were discussing full dependence on Krishna.
Okay, very nice. Yeah. So it's a fact that it's difficult just from the translations. That's always the case. Without the help of acharyas, it is very difficult to realize the bigger picture and what Krishna is trying to say. So we have seen the title of this chapter is actually Jnana Yoga, and Krishna has said in 17:18 that how these intricacies of karma are difficult to understand. The concept of action, inaction, forbidden action. After explaining those, then Krishna, from verse number 19, he talks about how to experience knowledge, how the knowledge will be awakened by engaging in activities without expecting the result for the action, without acting without desire for sense gratification. So when actions are performed like that, then action itself leads to knowledge. We perform many actions, but through actions itself, the knowledge of Atma. When I say knowledge, it's not just a mundane knowledge. It is possible that through actions, the knowledge of the self can be awakened. Now that's interesting. Just doing some activities, how can knowledge of the self be awakened? But that was the point of discussion in the verses from 19 through 23 or 24, I believe. So we can see here, I hope you can still see on the screen, the endeavors are free from the desire of sense gratification. He abandons the attachment to the results of his activities. And actually, you can see here when the endeavor is free from the desire for sense gratification, then actually that person is called Pandita. He is said by the sages to be a worker for whom the reactions of work has been burnt by the fire of perfect knowledge. So that just by acting like that without desire, then the knowledge has awakened and the knowledge has burnt to reactions all the previous karmas. So that's the power of knowledge. But the source of knowledge is again what? Action. Action without expecting any results. Action with detachment. It is my dharma, therefore I do it. We get into all these other things, ifs and buts and so many things, right? So when we act for the sake of action without any desire to enjoy the fruits, and it awakens the knowledge of the self. And there are so many verses, he acts with mind and intelligence perfectly controlled, giving up the sense of proprietorship. So in that condition, it doesn't mean you're not getting anything, but you may be getting necessities of your life. Shariram kevalam karma. So that bare necessities of life, expecting that much is okay. We see in Srimad Bhagavatam also, yavad jivet, yavad labhet, how does that verse go? Jivasya tattva jignasa natto yascheha karma bihi. And before that it says, labho jiveta yavata. Kamasya nendriya pritir, labho jiveta yavata. So the desires should not be engaged for sense gratification. But at the same time, labho jiveta yavata. The bare necessities of life that is required. And when a person lives like that, even though he's working, he's not affected by sinful reactions. So after all those verses, then this famous Brahmarpanam verse, and that one is actually talking about not just self-knowledge, but also the knowledge of the Supreme Lord. So then Krishna is also contrasting with this idea with various other processes that we may perform, other forms of karma yoga that can be performed. And in that sequence, there are different things being mentioned. And yesterday's verse, like Sugopi said, is about the grihasthas and the brahmacharis, how they engage in the process of sacrifice. So now when we say the word sacrifice, what comes to your mind?
Yagna.
Yagna, very nice. Was that Mayapur Sheshi Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu.
Yes, yagna, right? And in yagna, what happens?
We donate something to, some things to fire god.
Offer something.
Yeah, so we donate, we offer something. Where do we offer? How do we offer?
To the fire.
Yes, to the fire. We put right inside the fire, right? What do we put in the fire?
Fruits, ghee,
Grains.
Yeah, we put grains and ghee, particularly grains and ghee. These two are, that's why the Vedic culture, cows are important, cow protection, the cow milk, because it's used for the purpose of yagna, and yagna is such an important aspect of life. So therefore, now symbolically, we can offer the grains also, but all these are sacrifices. This set of verses are describing about different types of sacrifices. And in the sacrifice, fire is necessary. Fire is necessary. So that's why you see Agnishu Juhvati in the 26th verse. And in this verse also, Agnau Juhvati. So imagine that there's a fire, and imagine within the fire we're offering oblations. And we say Swaha, Swaha, Idam Namama, Idam Govindaya Swaha, Idam Krishnaya Swaha. This is for the Lord, this is not for me. We're expressing detachment and offering, this is not for me, and this is for the Lord. And of course, the Brahmana says the mantras, everybody else is just saying Swaha and throwing, and kids will have so much fun throwing. Yeah? The Brahmana is saying the mantras that this is not for me, this is for you, my Lord. This is not for us, this is for the Lord. So it's an act of saying this is not for me, this is for you. So now in here, what is the fire and what is being offered in this verse? I'll scroll down to translation. Yeah.
For all our senses and our very life itself, right?
Yeah, so what is the fire? Because there's an analogy of fire and there's an offering like grains. So what is the offering and what is the fire?
Fire is the controlled mind, like it says.
Yes, the fire is the mind. And what's being offered into the fire?
The senses and your life air.
Yes, yes. So different activities of the senses and the activities of the breath, the 5 different types of air. All those are being offered into, imagine a fire, into that fire. So the fire is consuming all these things. That means instead of acting externally, we are refraining from those actions and bringing those actions and offering those into the mind, and the mind is just consuming them. Okay. So instead of trying to eat whatever our favorite dishes, Gita Mala Mataji makes nice chaklis. Of course, for Krishna. If we want to be the enjoyer and we have a desire, and instead of acting upon that desire, we refrain from action and consume that within the mind itself, and don't let it come into the senses and perform the activity. And even this pranavayu, it helps. For example, right now I'm talking, and it's a pranavayu that helps to talk, to sing, to do these things. So in this verse, Krishna is saying that some people, they refrain from these activities of the senses, of the prana, and then they offer it as the offering into the control mind. So this is one process of sacrifice. And Srila Prabhupada in the purport explains that there are 10 different kinds of air. But in these 10 kinds of air, the 5 are prominent. The 5 are the main types of air. But 10 are also described. So in the 5, what are the 5 that Srila Prabhupada mentioned here? Can anyone recognize the 5 different types of air he's speaking in this verse?
Pranavayu, Apanavayu,
Yes.
and
Samana,
Samanavayu,
Udana, and Vyana.
Yeah.
So these are the 5 different types of air. And the Patanjali yoga system involves controlling these different types of airs. So the body itself, it consists of many nadis. Nadis are these channels, like the different tubes in the body or the nerves, or are the probably these arteries. It is explained there are so many nadis in the body. And through these nadis, there's circulation of air. And there are also chakras from one chakra, and these nadis flow, go to these chakras. And then the soul is situated in the heart region. And then there is this mind also is there. So when this air circulation doesn't happen properly, then there is agitation of the mind, and there is difficulty for the senses in activity. The senses will not act properly. So these different types of air will help in the functioning of the senses as well as in controlling the mind. And eventually, after proper purification, then the self can be realized as well. So it is a mechanical process, but it is one of the prescribed process. However, that process is very difficult in Kali Yuga. That process was actually recommended also to Arjuna. First of all, offering something into the controlled mind, the controlled mind as a fire, and then offering into the fire is not so easy. Atma Samyama Yogagna is not so easy. In the later chapter, Arjuna says about this, that it is not easy. So among all the senses and the mind, which one is superior? Are the senses working senses, and there are knowledge acquiring senses, and then there's mind, there's intelligence, and there's the spirit soul. So among the senses, who is superior? And mind is also included, if you include mind also in the senses.
Mind is
What?
superior.
Mind is superior.
Yes, mind is superior. And Krishna already talked about this in the 3rd chapter. Indriyani paranyahur, indriyebhya param manaha, manasastu para buddhi, yo buddhe paratastu saha. Yo buddhe paratastu saha. So indriyani paranyahur, the senses are superior to the dull matter. And indriyebhya param manaha, mind is superior to the senses. So now this, we understand that senses is superior to the mind, therefore we control the senses and offer them to the mind. But then Arjuna said in chapter number 6, later it comes, Chanchalam hi mana Krishna pramathi balavad dridham. His mind is chanchala. Chanchala means what?
Fickle.
Yeah, fickle, flickering. Chanchala is also name of
Lakshmi Devi.
Lakshmi Devi is also called Chanchala. Why?
Because she's not fixed in anyone's home.
Yeah, somebody becomes rich and then somebody becomes poor. Only if we engage Lakshmi in the service of Krishna, she will be happy. Chanchalam hi mana Krishna pramathi balavadridam. It's very mad and agitating. Pramathi, very strong. And it has so much strength, and it is also obstinate, dridham. Very strong, and it's very obstinate. Tasyaham nigraham manye vayoriva dushkaram. Vayoriva sudushkaram. And nigraham, controlling that, tasya nigraham, controlling of the mind, aham manye vayoriva sudishkaram. I considered it to be difficult like controlling the wind. Now, are we able to control the wind? I mean, can we just control the wind in our hands, or Okay, now the wind is blowing. Let's take a bag and put it in the big bag and seal it. It's not
Unless you are
possible.
Hiranyakasipu, you cannot.
Yeah, if you're Hiranyakashipu, you can control Vayudeva also. He actually managed all the departments by himself. He was so powerful like that. But Hiranyakashipu also did not have control on his mind. Prahlad says, my dear father, look at you. You control everybody, but you are unable to control your mind. Adanta gopir vishatam tamishram punaschar vita charvananam. Chewing the chewed, Adanta gobi. And he also says, forgot, he says something else about to his father about controlling the indriyas. Griha Medi, he says a verse, he tells him something. Prahlad Maharaj is challenging his father Hiranyakashipu. Even though he was able to control the wind, he was not able to control the mind. That was a good point about Hiranyakashipu. Thank you. Matirna Krishne Paratasvatova Mito Vipadyeta Grihavratanam Adanta Gobir Vishatam Tamishram Punascharvita Chervanana. Adanta Gobi. Those whose senses are not controlled, those who keep chewing the chewed of sense gratification, they cannot become Krishna conscious. Hiranyakashipu asks, how did you become Krishna consciousness? And how did you become Krishna conscious? Who taught you all these things? Matirna Krishna Paratasvatova. Just by from our own endeavor or someone else, that's not how it happens, my dear father. And particularly for people like you, Krishna consciousness is possible only by Mahatpada Rajobhishekam, by worshipping the devotees of the Lord. Great devotees taking the dust, bathing in the dust of the advanced devotees of the Lord. And here Arjuna is saying, Vayoriva Sudushkaram. Not possible. So that's the position of the mind. And now to control that mind and offer everything into that mind, it's so difficult. And it is these different aids actually that will tempt us. These aids in Apanavayu, it moves downwards. It pulls things inside. So when we are eating, we have to swallow, and Apanavayu is helping to bring it down inside. And after digestion, it pushes it down. So we can, excretion helps in excretion as well. And then Pranavayu, it goes up. Samanavayu, it's in the navel region, it helps in digestion. And certain things, they help in the joints, holding the joints and all this, keeping the joints and all these things together. I think that's a Vyanavayu. Sorry, Pranavayu goes outwards and it's Udana that goes upwards. And because of Pranavayu, we tend to speak and we tend to do certain things. So all of these help in these activities and they're pushing us to perform actions. And sometimes you can see a child is too excited and running around and jumping and pushing and all these things. So is why there's imbalance, it's pushing them. So then what do? We control these things. And how do we control? So this is one of the prescribed process. It helps. It's not that this process doesn't help to some extent. I mean, if you are really tired, just take some deep breaths. Because we're not conscious, we're absorbed in the sense objects, we're absorbed in the situation, we're absorbed in the things, we're absorbed in our anxieties. And if you just take a deep breath, it helps. But then maybe for a moment, it is not possible to control the mind completely. So yes, we have to be conscious of our breathing and stuff to a certain extent. But taking this as a complete process for self-realization is something not suitable for this age. And it wasn't suitable even for Arjuna towards the end of Dwapara Yuga. What to speak of now? So therefore, the alternate process that Srila Prabhupada gives is the process of Bhakti Yoga. And this Krishna in the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Mayyasakta Manapartha Yogam Yunjan Madashrayah Asamshayam Samagram Mam Yata Jnasyasi Tachrunu. Mayyasakta Manapartha Yogam Yunjan Madashrayah. He'll teach. This Bhakti Yoga begins in chapter number 7. And the very beginning, Krishna says this to Arjuna. Maya Sakta Manapartha. How by being attached to me. How Maya Sakta Manapartha Yogam Yunjan Madashrayah. You perform a yoga by taking shelter of me. By keeping your mind attached to me, you perform this yoga by taking shelter of me. And that is what Krishna teaches from chapter 7 onwards, the Bhakti Yoga, after discussing all these things. And that is what is prescribed for this day and age. The other things, yes, we understand the theory and everything, but we can clearly see. I was doing every day yoga for some time for my back problems and stuff, and I used to do some pranayama also. And sometimes if I do it before chanting, I could see my mind was not properly controlled, even though, yes, the body felt good and all these things are there, but the mind was not properly controlled. And even Patanjali Yoga, Ishvara Pranidhana is important. And there's also, Srila Prabhupada talks about Pratyaga Atma and Paryaga Atma. And in the very first chapter, verse number 29, it talks about this idea of, it says Paryag Chetasa, not exactly Paryag Atma, but that word Paryag is used in the Patanjali Yoga Sutra. And there it is that state, that consciousness is attained through actually chanting. It was interesting. I was looking up where Paryagatma is mentioned. Tata pratyak chetanadigamopi antaraya bhavascha. And actually, pratyagatma is the goal. Pratyagatma is the withdrawn. Paragatma, like Srila Prabhupada is saying, is engaged in sense enjoyment. And there the sutra says, Tataha pratyak chetanadigamopya antaraya bhavascha. From this comes the realization of the inner consciousness and freedom from all disturbances. So this, attaining proper realization of inner consciousness, abhigamaha pratyak chetana. So this pratyak chetana is obtained through one process, which the process was described in the previous verse of the Patanjali Yoga Sutra. And that verse is Tad japas tadartha bhavanam. Japa is by constant chanting and contemplation of its meaning. By constant chanting and contemplation of the meaning, the state of pratyak chetas will be attained. And of course, the chanting that was mentioned by Patanjali Muni is the chanting of pranava. Tasya vachakaha pranavaha. So he's talking about there is a person, Purvesham api guruhu, there is a great person, he is called Ishvara, and that Ishvara is the teacher of everybody, and that Ishvara you call that Ishvara by using pranava, by using Omkara. And by repetitively calling Omkara, by repetitively understanding the meaning that this Omkara signifies that Ishvara, and you do the japa, through that process, you will have self-realization. And this is Patanjali Muni's instructions. But of course, he also combines it with other yama, niyama, pranayama, pratyahara, all this. But he also suggests chanting. Now we know Omkara is who? Omkara is Krishna himself. But Omkara is what? Krishna's
Impersonal form.
yes,
Sound information.
impersonal way of addressing him.
Impersonal.
Impersonal way. So Patanjali Muni prescribes Ishvara Pranidhana, and he describes Ishvara as a Vishesha Purusha, and he describes Ishvara as the all-knower and the Adi Guru, and he says the designation for Ishvara is Omkara, and he says you have to repetitively chant Omkara, and by repetition, by repetitively chanting of Omkara, you will attain the state of Pratyagatma. That's he gives this process also through the process of japa. But then there is this elaborate other process also. But without Ishvara Pranidhana, you will not get Samadhi Siddhi. Ishvara Pranidhanat Samadhi Siddhi. So even for the success of the Ashtanga Yoga process, Ishvara Pranidhana is required. But they may be doing it, the exercise thing as the primary, and then the meditation and forcibly abstaining from all other actions. But our process is positive engagement. What did Ambarish Maharaj do? How did he control his mind? How did Ambarish Maharaj control his mind?
By engaging his senses in devotional service.
And particularly his mind by Savai Mana Krishna Padara Vinde Vachansi Vaikuntha Gunanu Varnane. Savai Mana Krishna Padara Vinde. His mind was always absorbed in thinking of lotus feet of Krishna.
Mm-hmm.
That's how he always engaged his mind. It's so powerful, his meditation, even though he was a king. So by meditating his mind on the lotus feet of Krishna, all the senses also, he engaged in Krishna's service. His words in describing the glories of the Lord, his hands in cleansing the temple, everything he did, that was in relation to the Lord. And his yoga was so powerful that he was not disturbed at all. A Kshatriya, his Kshatriya's self-respect and self-identity is so powerful. Like Dhruva Maharaj, he said, Narada Muni, I'm a Kshatriya. When my stepmother spoke like that, how can I just tolerate? I'm not a Brahmana. I cannot tolerate. But through some honest means, I want to gain something and prove to my stepmother that I can do it. But after he took shelter of Krishna, he had no desires. And Ambarish Maharaj, even though he's a Kshatriya, Durvasa Muni got agitated for a very simple fact that Ambarish Maharaj had drank some water before feeding him. It is etiquette that he should have fed, but yes, he didn't eat. He only drank some water, even that because in order to, as part of his sadhana, as part of his vratam, he had it, not for sense gratification. He had the power to stay without drinking water for 1 year. It's not that he couldn't control his senses. So he just drank some water. And Durvasa Muni became so angry that he sent a demon to attack him. And a Kshatriya, when attacked, he's ready to fight back, draw his sword and just get ready to fight. And for a Kshatriya like him to peacefully control and simply, Krishna, whatever you desire may happen, that's extremely, extremely, extremely difficult to do. But he was able to do it through the process of bhakti. And Durvasa Muni could, through the other process, he could gain so many powers, so many siddhis, but still he was unable to control his mind. And Ambarish Maharaj, he had absolutely no attachment for any of the siddhis, but his control over the mind was so powerful, so powerful. So therefore, we engage our senses in bhakti. How do we define bhakti? There are two things. One is bhakti and one is uttama bhakti. What is the definition of bhakti?
Anyabhilashita Shunyam.
Sevanam bhakti ruchyate.
So anyabhilashita shunyam is the pure bhakti, uttama bhakti. And then the next verse, Rupa Goswami says, Sarvopadi vinirmuktam tat paratvena nirmalam hrishikena hrishikesha sevanam bhakti ruchyate. So bhakti is hrishikena hrishikesha sevanam. Engaging the senses in the service of the master of the senses. This is called bhakti. We think we are the master of the senses and we try to enjoy through sense gratification. But actually we are not the master of the senses. We try to be master of the senses, but it is not possible for us to be master of the senses. We are actually servant of our senses. Not only we are servant of our senses, Srila Prabhupada says, we are also servant of the senses of everybody around us. The servant of the senses of our spouse, of our children. And Prabhupada says, not even that, even the servant, if you become angry at him, if you talk to him in certain way, he may become angry. So you are careful not to make him angry. You are careful not to make the servant angry. So our senses are also servant of our servant senses also. In the name of sense gratification, the servant will not do this work, then I will not be able to enjoy the senses. If I don't do this, my family will not be happy. So we're simply servant of our senses and servant of the senses of others also. But bhakti is to engage our senses in the service of the true master of our senses, which is Krishna. Krishna's name is Hrishikesha. So when that process happens, instead of abstaining the senses in the controlled mind by not acting, better offer the mind to the lotus feet of Krishna and offer the senses in the service of Krishna like Maharaj Ambarish did. And that is the more powerful and that is the most conducive process for Krishna consciousness. And how do we go about that? Ata Sri Krishna Namadi na bhaved grahyam indriyaihi sevon mukehi jihvadau swayameva spuratyadaha. So Krishna is not so easy to understand with the blunt senses and our intellect and all these things. Only through the process of service, Krishna can be understood. But in the beginning, jihva, the tongue, jihvadau, the beginning, we use the tongue. And what do we do with the tongue? What are the devotional activities that we do with our tongue?
Chanting and feasting.
Yes, chanting and honoring prasadam. These are the two activities that we do. So simply by these things, by chanting the holy names of Krishna, by eating prasadam, Srila Prabhupada says we can say, Krishna, I'll take this vow that I'll not eat anything that's not offered to you. And that's a better way to control than restricting ourselves from eating and everything like that, not eating at all. Eat that which is offered to Krishna. And that's the best Indriya Karmani, best way of performing Havan, Juhvan, Juhvati, Juhoti. Juhoti means to offer sacrifice. So, but that process of yajna, havana, through the process of offering prasad, bhoga to Krishna and eating prasadam. And the second one is chanting the holy names of the Lord. By constantly chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, we can control our senses. And Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur gives the practical example. I mean, he was like us. He was working outside. He was engaged with the society. And what is his realization? Sharira avidya jal jadendriyat ahekal. This body is made of ignorance, network of senses. Sharira avidya jala jada indriyat ahekal. This body is made of all this network of senses, network of ignorance. And when you are entangled in this, so many things, and we are gone, we are lost. Jive phele vishay sagare tara madhya jihvati lobho me sudurmati. Amongst all the senses, the most dangerous is the tongue. But Krishna is so merciful. Krishna bada doyamaya is so merciful. Krishna bada doyamaya karibare jihva jai swa prasadanna dila bhai. Krishna is so merciful that he gave us this prasadam. He gave us prasadam to satisfy the tongue. And by eating that prasadam, we'll be free from this entanglement of this network of senses that lead us to death, that practically will kill us, kill our existence, spiritual existence. And through the process of Krishna consciousness, we can happily be delivered. So many beautiful things are mentioned in the Shastra about this mind. And in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he is teaching Sanatana Goswami. When he teaches Sanatana Goswami, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has a beautiful verse. Actually, that verse is also cited by Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Kamadinam katina katida palita durnideshaha. Durnideshaha, the senses, they give us wrong direction, undesirable orders. They're always giving us orders. Do this, do that, do this, do that, do this, do that. Not only us, we also want to give orders to others what they should do. Always giving us orders. But Durnidesha, they're giving us bad orders. They're giving us undesirable orders. The direction is not good. But what did we do? Kamadinam katina katida palita. Palita, I have been following the instructions of my senses. So many instructions. Senses are telling me to do this, do that, do that. I have been faithfully doing. Palita, serving faithfully. Tesham jata maina karuna natrapa nopashantihi. But what is this? Tesham na karuna jata mai. They don't have any mercy upon me, these senses. They don't have any mercy. They don't have any shame. They keep on demanding me. Na upashantihi. They never get satisfied. They keep telling me, I keep doing. They are never satisfied. Not only that, they make others fulfill my desires and still they are not satisfied. But now Krishna, Yadupate, Utsrijjaitanate Yadupate Sampratam Labdha Buddhis. Now I have given up those things. Utsrijja. I got buddhi, labdha buddhi. Now I have, my intelligence is awakened. Tvam ayata sharanam, tvam sharanam ayata. I came to your shelter. And what is your shelter? Abhayam, the fearless shelter. I came to your fearless shelter. Mam niyungshvatma dasye. Atma dasye mam niyungshva. In your service, engage me. Please engage me. And this is what spiritual master also does. Yuktasya bhaktanscha niyunjatopi. Bhaktan niyunjataha. He's engaging the devotees. And here devotee is asking Krishna, please, Mam niyungshva atmadasye, engage me in your service. Because I'm tired, I'm fed up serving these senses. They're torturing me like anything. My senses, my mind, they're dragging me here, dragging me there. And shamelessly, I have been also following them. I am not satisfied, they're not satisfied. They keep demanding more and more. So please, Krishna, now I came to your shelter. You please help me. You please engage me in your service. And this is the prayer. And through this prayer, devotee tries to engage in Krishna consciousness and asks for the mercy of the Lord. And that is the way of offering the sensual activities in the fire of the mind. We offer our activities at the lotus feet of the Lord situated in our mind. And that is the alternate process prescribed by Srila Prabhupada throughout his teachings. So I'll stop here. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Anyone, are there any comments, questions from anyone?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, please accept my humble obeisances. All
Yeah,
question.
my obeisances, Nandagopal Prabhu, please.
Prabhu, so
Yes.
I have a question. I have heard so many times and read that no, we should aspire to remember the lotus feet of the Lord. And in your class as well, in the later half, you mentioned regarding Ambarish Maharaj pastime where he used to remember. But for a neophyte or even a sadhaka who doesn't even know, which is a pretender like me, what is the hope? Like, how should we remember lotus feet? Are we saying that remember the like a visual lotus feet from the Vigraha? Like, what exactly does it mean to remember lotus feet of the Lord? If you can explain that.
Very good question. So yes, we can have a picture of the deity, or when we go to temple, have darshan, and pay attention to the feet of the Lord. So it is, we can physically, the lotus feet of the Lord is there. Throughout Bhagavatam also this is mentioned, like when Kunti offers prayers, of course, because she's older to Krishna, she's a little shy. She starts with Namaha Pankajanabhaya, but in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says we should start with his lotus feet. So she, Namaha Pankajanabhaya, Namaha Pankajangre, Namaha, I forgot the sequence because I start with Pankajangre. So yeah, so when we go to temple, take darshan, first look at his feet, offer respects to his feet, and gradually rise up to his navel, to his beautiful garland, his neck, and then his smiling face. So this is the process of taking darshan. So when we take darshan of the Lord, we capture that darshan also in our heart. And we have devotees here, they send pictures of Krishna on WhatsApp every day. Open those pictures and just look at the feet first. That's your darshan, that's a meditation. And when we have some problems and when we think of Krishna, Krishna, please help me, start with his feet. You think of his feet and then his mind. So in this way, gradually, whatever form of Lord that you're worshipping, you keep that in your mind. It's Radha Madhav. Immediately his face will come to our mind, beautiful face of Radha Madhav. But we should also think of Radha Madhav's feet. So that's the literal way of, yes, physically, think of Krishna's feet. When you think of Krishna, what do you think? When I say Krishna, Nandagopal Prabhu, do you know Krishna? What do you think? What comes to your mind? Right? A
Krishna.
form of Krishna, a blue boy, right?
Yeah.
So in that form, keep attention on his feet also. So all the devotees, they first go to the feet and then rise up. And that feat has so much significance, so much significance. What to speak of, neophytes like us, the gopis, The gopis are so much attached to Krishna's feet. They are not just jumping to his beautiful face and smiling face and his lips. They're at his feet. And the queens of Dwaraka, they are thinking of Krishna's feet. Krishna is sleeping, they can't sleep, they wake up at night and because Krishna is sleeping, and they come out and sit outside, and then they see this bird, this kokila bird, and they talk to the bird, why are you not sleeping? Are you also feeling sad like me? Do you want to go offer a garland to Krishna's feet and put it in your hair? Of course, they are exalted devotees. My point is, the prayers of so exalted devotees like Dwaraka queens and the gopis, as well as you see here, Mother Kunti, different rasas, everybody is thinking of Krishna's feet. All the mellows, Krishna's feet, and meditation on Krishna's feet is there. So that's our first step. If we want to establish personal relationship with the Lord, we start with his feet. We start with the feet of the Lord. But we don't force it that much. But when we have Krishna, when we say Krishna personal form, the feet is really, really, really helpful. By meditating on the lotus feet of the Krishna, we can conquer lusty desires. We can conquer anger. So many things. Very powerful. So now, the second thing I wanted to say is, Srimad Bhagavatam first 2 cantos are considered to be the lotus feet of Krishna. First 2 cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam. So we can constantly study, repetitively study the first 2 cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam. Beautiful narrations in the first 2 cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam. So that can also be considered contemplation on the lotus feet of the Lord. So I hope to some extent it answers your question.
Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Anyone else was holding anything? Yes, my appreciation, Prabhu.
Prabhuji, like regarding this chapter, it's transcendental knowledge, right, Prabhu? So you explain like when we are doing action, while doing the action, you are also have that transcendental knowledge. So
Correct.
with respect to this sacrifice, this yajna, how you have that transcendental knowledge?
Good point, actually. Very good question. So as Krishna has explained in the previous verses, when we perform activities without desire for sense gratification. So even in bhakti, we may have some desires, right? We may have desire for recognition, or desire from some material profit, so many desire for, our family members. We may have so many of these desires. But when we do bhakti without these desires, just for the sake of pleasing the Lord, then more knowledge will be awakened within us. Then we make faster progress. So if we approach bhakti also in the mood of this is for Krishna, this is not for me. Sometimes what happens is bhakti also becomes a routine activity without proper feeling. But the first thing that we can have in bhakti, even without feeling love and all those things, is the first step we can have is do it for Krishna. Do it without expectation of results. That will help a lot to awaken proper knowledge within our heart. Thank you for asking that question. Prabhu, does that make sense?
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You also said, Srinivasacarya Prabhu, that when you did pranayama, your chanting wasn't necessarily better. What did you mean by that?
No, not chanting was better. What I was saying is just pranayama did not help. If I observed my mind to see how the mind is feeling, just pranayama wasn't giving me everything I need. For example, say I didn't read Bhagavatam on that day. I was so busy, so I just did my rounds and I just pranayama. I didn't do much more devotional activity. So pranayama was not a substitute for my other parts of bhakti. That's what I was meaning to say. his pranayama was not the means to control my mind. It was helping me for my physical thing and stuff, but it wasn't, contributing to the deeper aspects of, mind control and sense control and all those things. Okay, it was giving me some health benefits and a little bit of this thing is there, but the most part of my conscious development, advancement was through bhakti, not through pranayama.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yes. Okay. I hope I'm not holding up next program. Devotees have back-to-back programs. I don't know if there's anything else right now and I'm holding up. Okay, so we'll stop here. Thank you very much, all the devotees, for your association. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki.
Prabhupada ki jai, Srinivasacarya Prabhu ki jai.
Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki jai.
Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare Krishna.
Krishna.